Michael with United Veterans Worldwide, excited today to meet with Becky. Becky and I came in contact with each other a couple of weeks ago via Instagram. I saw some of her posts and I was really moved by the advocacy that she stood for. And I felt like she would be such a great voice for this channel and for this global audience that just hit 81,000 today. So I'm super excited to introduce you to Becky. Becky, will you tell us more about yourself?
Yes, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for having me. It is an honor to be here. So I guess I should start with, I'm in my internship phase right now of finishing up my master's degree in emergency responder and military psychology. So when all is said and done, actually this summer, I will graduate and I am working, it's been a long time. I will be working as a therapist, which I am doing now, but specializing with first responders and members of the military. And that came from the last 5.5 years of work I've sort of done on my own with an organization that I started in 2019. It's now called Holding Space for Heroes. Originally, we started it as Blue Love to support law enforcement officers and their mental health, my best friend and I. And then over the years, we built a huge network of officers and agencies and supporters across the country and around the world. And I've been running it by myself for a couple of years. And then last year I rebranded to Holding Space for Heroes to include all first responders and military so we can provide support and resources. And that's also what led me to go back to school. I started this degree in May of 2021 after referring a lot of people to professionals. I had a call from a police officer friend who wanted me to talk to another police officer friend with the, obviously with the disclaimer that I wasn't, just a regular person. And then I thought to myself, I should probably go back to school and become the professional that they're all looking for. So it just kind of was like, all right, I'm going back to school. I have no idea where or how or what I'm going to do. I've been out of college for 20 years, but it's my second career. It's my calling. And it's just been going really well so far. Very surreal at the same time.
I love a couple of the words that you've used already, Becky. One, you said, this is your calling. And I believe it is. And we had a great conversation on the phone. I think I expressed something very similar, which is that I really felt like starting this channel and introducing people's stories and starting them on a journey, most of them starting on a journey of healing, was my call. And I absolutely love the fact that you have decided to go back to school. It can be intimidating, but I'm sure that you've found, like I have found going back to school, I'm actually going to go back to school again here in May,
Nice.
that life experience really prepares you so much better for the education system.
Yes, 100%. And it's so different now too, because my program is through Colorado State University Global. So it was all online.
Yep.
And I work full time. And I'm doing my internship. So having that flexibility to just kind of do my assignments and things whenever was very beneficial. But there's still, even though you're not in-person classes, there's still a lot of community.
Yep.
Because some of my professors were police officers or veterans, and a lot of my classmates were responders or retired in those fields. So I've been surrounded by a lot of really amazing people, and they've helped me learn as well.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? When I bring people on this channel, I can't say anyone that I haven't learned from and taken something away and said, man, I wish I did it like they did it. Maybe I would have healed a lot sooner along this path. But Becky, take me back in time. Do you mind if I call you Becky? I see your name is Rebecca.
Oh, please call me Becky.
Becky, great. Let's go back in time a little bit and let's talk about maybe some experiences you had that probably geared you towards a life where you focus on you opened yourself up for a call to serve veterans and first responders.
So I've always had an interest in mental health. Mental health is always something that I've been aware of since I was a kid with my own challenges and things like that. So it's always been something that's been pretty normalized for me and something that I've encouraged other people to normalize. And as a mother, I've always encouraged my kids to talk about mental health too. But I'm not a first responder. I'm not married to a first responder. People usually assume that I am. But in 2019, when I started my organization, we just at the time saw this need for support from the community and from civilians for police. That was the initial thing. And then we just kind of started seeing the mental health effects in police officers. And we're like, all right, we need to do something. We're not therapists or anything, but we can at least offer support and then provide resources. So it just all kind of clicked then. And it just took off on its own. I can't really pinpoint how or when. It was just very organically. We just started connecting, and social media has been like my lifeblood of this. I have over the last, so this was 2019. So in August, it'll be 6 years.
Wow.
And in that time, I have made so many amazing friends. I have learned so much from this community of, officers and their spouses and agencies, chiefs of police, like incredible people. These are my heroes. I don't fangirl over celebrities, but I will fangirl all day over first responders and military because they are the ones who keep us safe. They're the ones who keep us free. So I can't explain necessarily how I connect with these communities. I just do. And it's something that I kind of think about a lot. I'm like, what? How do I just click with so many of them? They trust me. And that's something that is very valuable to me and I do not take lightly. And especially because of the stigma that's within the communities about getting help, when they can ask for help and they talk to me about their issues, I know that there's a level of trust there that I would, I hold sacred.
Yes.
And I don't know, I just connect. I work at a police department as my day job, and then I come to my internship. I do my internship on the weekends as well to get my hours in. And I love it. It's something I did for quote unquote free for years. And it's something I would do free the rest of my life. It's just that I can be a better asset for them if I'm trained and educated in this, so I can actually provide. I can listen all day. I will listen to anybody. Anyone can call me at any time and I will listen. But if we want to go to the next level of where I'm an actual therapist, I had to just do all this stuff, and then that can be my career, and then I can literally dedicate all my time to it. So
that's incredible to me. I interviewed a guy the other day who, was it just yesterday? It seems like it's all gone by so fast. His name is Nate. He was a therapist and he started to treat veterans. And he found that veterans would not open up to him. They said, you don't know the lingo, you don't know this, it's too much to explain, I can't walk you through it. Yeah. And then one of his patients ended up taking his life. And Nate woke up and he's like, I'm going to join the Army so I can figure this out. And he did.
Wow.
And
that's amazing.
He did the Army Reserve so that he could do part-time and still keep his therapy office open. But now people come and talk to him and he's like, yep, I know the lingo, I know the experience, I can kind of share these things. I love the fact that you're volunteering. I call it volunteering work because that's kind of what I'm doing now. I'm not being paid for this. Open the doors for people to trust you enough to even tell you their stories, and now to get to a point where you've just swung the door wide open. You're like, now we can get into the nitty gritty and really help you move on that scale of progression clinically.
Yes.
Which is so powerful. I just can't get enough of these stories where people will go back to school and really try to pinpoint ways to help. Second piece is that when I started this channel, my inspiration was for global veterans because that was my experience meeting with guys all over the world.
Oh, yeah.
And seeing their suffering and not having resources or benefits or anything like we have in the United States. And my heart went out to him and I said, I've got to do something to reach these guys and provide a way or hope. And out of the 81,000 subscribers I have today, I would say more than half are international who
That's
are tuning
amazing.
But once I started to interview veterans and they would say, hey, I want you to interview my buddy. He's got an incredible story, but he's not a veteran. I'm like, great, bring him on. And then I started to get introduced to firefighters first. And I was blown away at how many times a shift they would go through a traumatic event. Whereas from a soldier's perspective, I would have a year-long deployment and I might pinpoint 4 or 5 things that were traumatic. The rest of the time was just standing around or whatever, but not first responders.
No.
They endure everything. And not only that, they have to turn around and walk home afterwards and pretend that everything's okay.
Exactly. And the other thing too is that I do as many police ride-alongs as I can. So I've done 4 of them so far. I need to do more, but I did one with my department that I work for, which was even more interesting for me because I work in records. So I see all the calls and the reports. So seeing it firsthand and seeing what they go through, it's definitely the trauma exposure is exponential compared to civilians, right? But also they have to go from call to call to call. One call can be because the neighbor said that their neighbor's cat was on their car. And then the next thing, we're at a domestic. And then the next thing is something else that's minor. And then the next thing is something violent. So it's the trauma exposure, but it's also the ups and downs of having to reset for each call. And I was fortunate enough to be able to witness enough calls that night to see the variety of them. And also the variety of, there's a lot of stuff that people call the police for that is not actually for police, but they still have to go anyway for calls of service. So it's a lot. And then firefighters, paramedics, any first responder, they are going from it's constantly up and down, fight or flight, adrenaline's always going. So, the likelihood of having trauma is very good. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get PTSD, but the likelihood is higher.
Yeah.
So, they need to be able to talk about it, and they need to be able to understand that you're under the uniform, behind the badge, under the helmet, you're a human being. And yes, you may be strong. And yes, I would say that responders and military are cut from a different cloth. And there's nothing wrong with that. But they're also human beings. Yep. And it's okay to react. It's okay to remember. It's okay to be okay. You don't have to be upset by something, but it's okay to be upset by something as well. I think we just have to kind of normalize your reaction. So if you're not upset about a car accident, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. And if you're very upset about it, it also doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. You're a human being. So
Great point.
Kind of say, I don't really take care of the uniform. I take care of the person.
Yeah.
They just happen to wear the uniform, and the culture is the huge part. Like we were talking about the therapists that join the Army. It's the culture. You have to understand how a police department works, how a fire agency works, how the military works, because then you can understand the culture, and therefore you can understand the challenges that are unique to those communities that are very different from the civilian community.
Yeah, what great insight you get from doing the job that you're doing, in addition to doing the therapist piece. It's going to get you right inside of the culture. You're going to see it firsthand. You'll see good performers, bad performers, and all in between. When you mention fight or flight, one of the challenges for military being deployed in a combat zone is that most of the time there's not action. Our base was constantly rocketed at night, and at first I was always at a 10. Eventually I realized they were firing from the back of a moving pickup truck, and who would ever be able to hit anything with that? Thank goodness. And so then my guard would come down. But then when an explosion would happen, I'd go back up, and doing checkpoints, 90% of the cars had no issue, but those 10% that kind of come through were back up and down, up and down. What happens is it stops going down. It just stays in fight mode. We come home from deployment, we're like, oh, I've missed my spouse, my kids. I love you. It's so great. Don't touch me. Don't scream. Don't, right? And it seems like that becomes broken in a sense. And it's really a challenge to flip that switch again so that it functions naturally, right?
Yeah,
I think I'm still learning.
And your adrenals get drained, and you have to sort of regulate and get back to baseline. And that's part of the recovery process, is understanding that it's a physical thing as well. And that's why having the friendships that I have and talking to as many responders as I have over the years has been, I would say, even more educational than my degree. If I could get them all to just sign off on my thing, I could have had my doctorate by now. But they are who I learned from the most. Like I joke around with some of my cop friends, like, I call it like texts from cops. You'll never get texts like you do from cops. And but I learned so much from them because of what they're doing and what they're doing out there, or EMS, or what's going on, like deployed. Like my supervisor's son is deployed. And that's the other thing too. There's a huge cross population with responders and veterans.
Yep.
So like at my police station, you go in the parking lot, you see tons of veteran plates.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing too, is the cross population is taking care of them, because they might have a multitude of challenges. I don't want to say issues, but challenges from military and then from being a responder. They have that call to service. It's something that it's their calling, but at the same time, that just means that they need support in that calling as well.
Yeah, and I've seen firsthand a transition from military infantry, as an example, door kicker, shooting guns, whatever, going right into the police the next day, and that transition needed to be a little bit longer for them, because they were too quick to action. And I blame no police officer when I hear of police officers who've pulled a gun, even fired in scenarios. For anyone watching, I did a scenario where they pulled up a movie screen almost, and they said we're approaching a door and it's going to be a domestic dispute, whatever, and someone's saying there might be some violence, and so we're just waiting to see what happens, and then someone comes out of the door with one of their hands behind their back, and we don't know what's going on, and in a split second there's a gun in my face, and if I wasn't even ready, I would already be shot. And the pressure that's on police to respond to these type of situations is impossible. I mean, it really is impossible.
Yeah.
Because
they can't. Yeah, they can't win.
They can't. You're not fast enough for one, or you overreact because you're reading clues a little bit differently. And the only people that can judge you are the people who are behind a desk far away, and they say, oh, you probably shouldn't have done that. And you're like, get on the ground. It's a whole new warfare, right?
Yeah, and that's part of the reason that this, support for the police started when we did, was because, and this was before 2020 went nuts.
Yep.
But just social media is a wonderful thing. I mean, it has brought so much good into my life. However, the Monday morning quarterbacks who sit there and bash the police and, oh, you shouldn't have done this and you should have done that. And I'm just like, hi, you're part of the problem here.
Yep.
Like, the whole defund movement, and then people, complaining about that they can't win. Oh, you should have shot him. You should have tased him. You should have done this. You should have done that. And I try not to argue with people online. Sometimes I do. And I'm like, why don't you go apply?
Yeah.
Every agency is hiring right now.
Yep.
And if you don't think that you can, then maybe you should sit back, because you're part of the problem of this anti-police climate.
Yep.
And they are actually part of the problem that is contributing to the mental health issues within our responder community. Because how is a police officer supposed to feel when they're going out with the best intentions? They're put into an impossible situation and they react and they use their training. And then you have all of these people online. It's hard for people to block that out all the time. They can usually, but sometimes you can't. And it just feeds this this monster of, we need to be supporting our police. We need to be supporting our responders, because at the end of the day, you're going to call them when you need them. You actually call them when you don't need them. It's not even police business and you're calling. So that's another piece of it too. And that was really why we kind of wanted to get out there and be like, listen, there are a lot of us out here who support you. We love you. We're going to do everything we can. And then that's just continued for me, and I'm just stepping it up a notch.
Yeah.
So that's, just what I'm just dedicated to. And I just hope I can help people.
I think you are, and I think you will. I wish that there was a mechanism in place that could prepare people ahead of trauma to deal in healthier ways to trauma. If we look at some of the old movies that came out in the 90s about firefighters, after every shift they would go to the bar and they would all get drunk, and then they'd go back. And in the movie, I never thought anything about it. I'm like, oh, they're just going to the bar. Mm-hmm. But they're coping with the events of the day, and it becomes a negative coping mechanism. Alcohol did.
Oh, 100%. Right?
Like, all the people that I've known who, sadly, and I hate to say it, but have committed suicide from the Army, alcohol was always involved. It's a depressant. It spun them a little bit too far down, and that was it. And so I hate that coping mechanism, and it's all too common. But I met with a firefighter who said, people call police and fire when they're having their worst day.
That is right.
And they're supposed to show up and cope with this person who's having their worst day. And the next call might be the exact same. And you have to keep doing it and keep doing it. I don't know how they do it.
I don't either. I think it's a mix of compartmentalization. I think that they kind of have to push it aside just to get through the shift. It's still there. And a lot of times it is the worst day, and then it can be like a really horrible call, and then a silly call, and then another horrible call, and you just really don't know what to expect. That's the whole thing too. It's unknown. There's no way to possibly predict what that day is going to look like for any responder.
Yeah.
So I think definitely we need to put some tools together to work with academies, and even with boot camps, about mental health. There's a lot of change happening within responders communities from the responders themselves. And that's really where the stigma is going to kind of get smashed, for lack of a better term. But also we need that paradigm shift, and that really starts with them. And sobriety is actually something that is really being normalized. Good. Is that, listen, the alcohol is easy.
Yeah.
It's easy to get. It's easy to grab. It works for a little bit, but ultimately it is not going to help. It is a depressant. It's a risk. You could be really fun one day, and then you could have a drink and you could be absolutely so depressed to the next day. Yeah. It's dangerous. And it is an unhealthy coping mechanism. So that's something, I do talk about with clients, and I do ask people just in general, I'm like, you drinking? How much are you drinking? And I'm happy that sobriety is being normalized. I don't judge anybody for drinking. Yeah. I mean, if you want to have a drink, that's totally fine. But when we're using it to numb, or we're using it to get through something, that's when it becomes unhealthy. And it also causes a huge multitude of physical issues, which are just going to further, someone's mental health, physical health. It's all connected.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would agree with you on that. But fortunately, like I said, sobriety is something that's really being kind of talked about more, and how important it is, and how you can live a totally sober life and still have fun, and can actually, excel maybe even further than you thought you did when you're not having alcohol.
Yeah. I think one of the first things I noticed about your Instagram channel was that you were helping our communities normalize mental health discussions. And I think that's so important. Everybody that I have a phone call with before having an interview, especially guys, I tell them emotion is free game. And they're like, what? Emotion? I'm like, yes. Because I don't only want to talk about the mental health aspect. I want to talk about the emotional health. And a great interview I had a couple weeks ago with one of the spouses, she said, my husband came home from a deployment and physically he wanted to be with me.
Mm-hmm.
But emotionally, he did not have any capacity for it. And
Mm-hmm.
only through healing and therapy did he finally become available emotionally for her. And she said that was such a tough balance.
Yeah.
And she's like, Michael, please talk about the emotional healing that needs to take place with veterans and first responders. You know, one of the things that's different in training with military versus first responders is we were trained as infantry. We were trained to kill. We were trained to fight to kill, hand to hand. Everything was about ending the game. It wasn't about communicating. It wasn't about coping. It wasn't helping them to cope. It was just ending the game.
Right.
And I remember when I first realized I was a combat medic for the first 7 years. And I was like, man, I'm learning how to save lives, but not their life. I'm learning how to save these lives and kill these guys. That's my job. I'm a killer. And it became so more when I became infantry later. But it was eye-opening because transitioning back into the civilian world became such a speed bump to progress. That mindset. I told somebody recently I had a job, and my boss yelled at me, like tried to get in my face and screamed at me. I didn't keep that job, and I'll stop there. But I wasn't in a place where I could have somebody in my face screaming at me. Nor should anybody. But like,
I don't think I am either.
It just wasn't a good scenario for me to be in. And I recognized that my actions weren't right. I knew I had work that needed to be done, and you know, I think as a therapist, you're gonna see guys like me come in that would have been really closed off emotionally, and said, "What did you want me to do?" And instead of what I'm saying now, it's like, "Oh, I was freaking wrong," right? Like I should have de-escalated that and moved out, right?
Yeah, self-awareness is huge, and it's a big win. So one of the things I work with on my client, the clients I have now, is you got to count all the small wins. And I learned that from my fitness coach, who's a lieutenant on NYPD. And he, I'm not really sure he knows how much he's helped me with being a therapist. I guess I should tell him. But
well, he might listen.
Chris, this is for you. So one of the things he's always taught us is to build these small wins, because that's what creates this foundation. So being aware of a behavior, even if you're not changing it yet, is a win. You have to be able to observe what you're doing, and then you can take a step back and be like, all right, what's causing this? And then the only way you're going to be able to change something is to observe it. And you can kind of mitigate that behavior. But that's focusing, the small wins are being able to see that. So being able to say, all right, I didn't do what I was supposed to do, but I recognize that I wasn't supposed to do that. So instead of looking at it as regret, like, oh, I should have done this, it's like, all right, well, guess what? It happened. I look back, I know I'm learning from this. Because if we spend our lives looking back at regret, we're never going to move forward. We're never going to have the progress that we want. So definitely being able to observe and recognize our behaviors is a really important thing. And the more wins we go through in my sessions, the more people realize, oh, maybe I'm not as a mess as I thought I was. And then I tell everybody we're all a mess. We're all just doing the best we can. Yeah. You got here, you came to your appointment, you're talking to me, you booked it, you're booking another one. So win. Like, that's kind of how we have to look at this. And as far as the emotional piece, especially when it comes to men, you're right. I do put a lot of stuff up about men too, because men need to understand that it is okay. It's all right. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you a liability. No. It just means that you're a human being. And, I try to put out a lot of messages like that. And if someone puts out something kind of like strange or seems off on Instagram or anywhere, I'll just kind of be like, you good? You okay? Sometimes, most of the time, yes. Every now and then, no.
Yeah.
And then we're like, okay, are you safe? Are you in crisis? No, I just need to talk. All right, let's do that. Yeah. So, I have no problem asking people that I don't know if they're okay. And it has been quite amazing to have people trust me who don't know me. And I'm hoping that I'm just putting that kind of energy out there, that I am somebody that you can trust, and it's okay to feel the way that you're feeling. You're doing a really hard job and you're up against it. So let's get it out so it doesn't bother you so much. And it works. Yeah. It works. It doesn't work all the time. It's a practice, but regulating emotions and being able to kind of feel what you feel and not let it just sit with you, just processing it, even if we don't fix it necessarily, because it doesn't mean something's broken. Right. Just kind of getting it out. Nobody's broken. People will say I'm broken. I'm like, no, we bend. We don't break. We're all a little damaged. We're all scarred. We all have, our stuff. Yep. But you're not too far gone until you're gone. So let's work on staying.
Yeah. I'm glad when I hear messages like you've just said that resonate with things that I say periodically on the channel, which is trauma is the most universal language in the world today, which is sad, but we all have our trauma. I don't do comparisons on the channel. I might have a Navy SEAL on here who served for 20 years, who had incredible missions and incredible victories and incredible sorrows at the same time. And then somebody who's a call taker for a police department. And I don't compare trauma. Trauma is trauma is trauma. And everybody responds a little bit differently.
Exactly.
And exactly. I want those people to still have a voice that says, yeah, my trauma to me was impactful. And I too want to find healing. And I'll say for one, Becky, finding your content and then having a conversation with you on the phone, I left that conversation, one, trusting you, having an appreciation for you and your work.
Thank you.
I left just so full. So if that's the influence you had on me, and I meet with people many times a week talking through their difficulties, I'm positive other people are going to have that same experience with you as a therapist.
Thank you.
When you've gone on those rides, has it opened your eyes to the amazing challenges that police officers have to face every day?
Yeah. I mean, you never know what you're going into. There's no such thing as a routine anything. There's no routine area check. There's no routine traffic stop. You have absolutely no idea. So one of the things I admired most on the one that I did with my department was how observant they are and how they see everything and are looking everywhere. Like I was trying to look and have, I try to have as much situational awareness as I can, but they see everything and they know what to look for. And it was just very educational to see them do their jobs and, asking questions, but at the same time looking around and making observations, because I read all the reports. So it's really, it was quite, amazing to make the connection between what they're seeing and then reading the report, because the reports are super detailed. I mean, they get everything. Like some of these reports I read, I'm like, wow, like it was like they scanned it in their head. And some of it they get from body cam, but a lot of it is just, I can see them looking around. They constantly head on a swivel, not just for threats, but to gain information on the situation to see if there's, more to it, or is there something else going on, or is there a perceived danger, things like that. So to see it is pretty cool, and it's very, very impressive. And I think if people saw what they deal with on a daily basis, and I did one with a friend of mine who's a lieutenant in my local department, my home department, and just the observations he made too. Like we talked to a witness for something, and he just noticed all these things that I was like, oh yeah, you're right. Like I noticed a couple things too, but he noticed like just details that I don't think the regular person would notice, because it leads them to something. Yeah. So it's just very interesting how their minds work and how they're very task oriented. They're very mission oriented, which helps me in my sessions when I have responders, because that's the way that they think. Very, very tasks, missions. What do I have to get done? So it's, very educational. It's fun. I mean, it's cool to like drive around in a police car really fast, but it's also incredibly humbling as well for me.
When we talk about like gifts or strengths like that of situational awareness, recognizing details, seeing small movements, and being able to react in that moment. The only time I've heard about gifts that people have, and that could come to a gifted healer, a therapist, or a physical therapist, or massage therapist. I mean, all the types of therapists, right?
Yeah.
And it's because they've undergone trauma themselves.
Yes.
And it flips a switch. Mm-hmm. And when that switch is flipped, your gift comes out tenfold. So I talked to a person who was abused as a child severely on this channel, and it absolutely broke my heart to hear her story. But what came out of that trauma was an amazing gift to heal with her hands. And if her perpetrators could see the gift that she has now, I think they would beg her forgiveness, because of how majestic she is today, finding the true source of healing, which is God, and finding a place of value again. And man, I love the imagery of trauma creating gifts. We're not broken, nor are we cured, but we can be healed.
That's exactly it.
Finding a new state of being.
Yes. That's exactly it. And in healing, it's not linear, and there's no finish line. Healing is a constant journey. You're healing from trauma. You're healing from past relationships. You're healing from old stories that maybe you've been thinking about yourself that were never true, but you had convinced yourself that they were. And it's never too late to rewrite those stories, and it's never too late to heal. But I tell people all the time, I'm like, you're not broken. I promise you that you're not broken. We're all a little dented. We all have scars. And honestly, those scars make us who we are. Yep. We should have a few little things here and there. And I try not to say fixed. Because you're not broken, and there's nothing wrong with you. There's something going on with you. And that's the difference. We admonish ourselves a lot. We say, that was a breakthrough I had with my own therapist last year, believe it or not.
I do.
I too see a therapist.
I do. I still do as well.
And I would say to myself, what is wrong with you? And then finally it was just like, all right, that script needs to be flipped to, all right, what is going on with me? Yep. Something's going on. That's fine. Yep. But I don't need to be yelling at myself, acting like I'm doing something wrong. I just need to check in with myself.
Yeah.
So I encourage my clients to do that too. I'm like, how many of you say in an inner dialogue, what's wrong with me? Everybody. And I'm like, all right, well, let's stop that, flip the script, and let's just say, hey, what's going on with me? Check in with yourself. And that way you can kind of observe. And then those observations are what lead to some changes in behavior. And that way they can help me, because honestly, the biggest progress for clients is between sessions. So they can meet with me, and then I meet with them in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever they want to do. And then they come back and I'm like, all right, how was the last couple of weeks? What did you do? And then it's like, okay, I observed that I do this when I think this. And then it's like a map. We're kind of like putting together the dots to get to this destination. And, it's like a puzzle kind of thing.
Yeah.
So but yeah, people are not broken. A lot of people think, oh, I'm broken beyond repair. I'm like, no, that's not how that works at all. You just need some care, and you need some, TLC, and people need to give themselves grace.
Yeah.
That's probably the most important thing, is give yourself some grace and just stop being so hard on yourself.
Yeah. If you think back to the early cartoons when we were growing up, they would often display like a devil on a shoulder and an angel on a shoulder, and sending different messages. I'm like, where did they get that idea? And then I got older and I was like, oh, because I often have a negative self-talk going on right here.
Yes.
Oh, you're not good enough. Of course you shouldn't. Of course you can't. And I have to kind of like flick it off like they do in the cartoons, and then listen to the other side that's like, keep pushing, keep fighting, keep moving. You can change lives. You can do this, right?
That's it.
Um,
That's it.
so negative self-talk has no place, no business being in our ears.
No.
It becomes a form of self-sabotage where we almost are predicting our own demise and creating that pathway for it. And I hate to see warriors, right? Warriors, first responders, veterans who have given so much of themselves feel like there's no other path but this destructive path that they've laid out in front of themselves. And our work, Becky, is trying to turn that table, turn that dialogue, turn that mindset. Nah, this is possible. Look at me, smile. This is genuine. Why?
Yeah.
Because I was in that dark place. I was at that line of suicide. And I got helped away from it and realized that there really was this pathway of progression and healing. I want everybody on this channel to recognize that and feel that, because that's the work that we do, because we believe it.
And I am not a responder, or I did not serve, but I too have been to that place.
Yes.
And it is a very horrible, dark, terrible place to be. So I got help, and, intensive help. And it's not something I'm ashamed of, because it's just what I'm trying to help other people do is, listen, if you are thinking about this, you need to tell me so we can get to you. But even though I have not served or been a responder, I do understand that part of it. So I feel like I do have some insight into how that feels.
Of course.
There's a lot of judgment about suicide, like afterward, like, oh, they were selfish or it was cowardly. And I'm just like, you have absolutely no idea the magnitude of what's happening in that situation. And, the suicide rate within police officers is high. Obviously, within the military, it's high. It's growing because of so many different factors.
Yep.
But we can't be afraid to talk about it. I will ask people, are you suicidal, outright? Because I need to know. Are you okay? No. Okay. Are you thinking about,
have you made a plan? Yeah.
Or are you just sad?
Yeah.
And if you're just sad, that's okay. I'm not saying just sad, but I need to know if you're in crisis, because I've got to be able to get someone to you or get you somewhere.
Yep.
But I feel like it does give me some insight, because I do understand that feeling, and that, that the ideas that come with it. So I feel like that, is helpful in a way that I wouldn't really necessarily be able to relate to had I not gone to that place.
Becky, let me correct your language a little bit. Not in a way, in a huge way. Once you've looked down that dark alley at the final end and turned away from it, you're now prepared to make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
Had I not gone and sat in that dark place and saw no hope, no light, and been pulled back away, there's no way that I could talk to people the way I talk to them today with a surety that says, I know. If you're sitting in a dark room right now, blinds closed, thinking only negative self-talk, that you're better off not here. I've been there. That can be recovered.
Yes.
You can find new purpose. You can find joy in your life. The sun will still rise every morning, and you can look out and feel it and see it and touch it, right? Not by accident, Becky.
Right.
Not
and they're not
by accident.
And the other thought process, is, oh, they'd be better off with that. Like, a lot of people will be like, oh, he had kids, how could he do that? It's like, because in that moment, he or she wanted the pain to stop.
Yep.
He or she was consumed by it, and he or she probably believed that they would be better off without them.
Yeah.
So it's a horrible, dark thought process, but because it's a dark place, we can kind of go back in, and we know the layout, and we've got some light with us, and we can either lead people out, or we just go in and pick them up and carry them out.
Yes. Yep.
Oh.
By design. It's a hard thing to hear sometimes, but it's by design. There's no other way to rescue.
No.
There's no other way to rescue. I had a religious leader during my darkest moments come to my home, and he said, "When was the last time you were able to feel love or hope?"
Mm.
I said, "It's been years." And he
Wow.
says, "Okay. Well, would you still choose God now if you never again felt hope or joy or love?"
Mm.
And I thought about it for a while. And I said, "Yeah, I would."
Yeah.
And that small little moment changed my vision. And I said, it doesn't matter if I'm struggling. I can still lead a good life and help other people. And suddenly I saw this like massive spike in healing. And I suddenly progressed. And I remember the moment when I first felt hope again. And it was actually living in this home. I was driving down this street and I felt it. And I think I burst into tears because for so long I wanted that feeling that there was hope. And now that's all that you and I want to do is help other people feel that same thing.
Yeah, I cry all the time. It's a very emotional journey. I mean, literally I can tell you that every single day since I made the decision to go back to school, which is 4 years almost now, every single day without a day missing, I have had some sort of interaction, whether it's in person or online, that I'm going where I'm supposed to go every single day without fail. And it's just amazing to me. And so, I'm a very emotional person anyway. So I cry when I'm happy. I cry when I'm sad. I cry when I'm overwhelmed. But yeah, I would agree with you on that. And the other thing too, with therapists in general, and then when we're taking care of our responders and our heroes is, we have to, we teach them about, being aware of burnout, right? And making sure self-care is a priority. So we have to do the same things for ourselves too. I try to model the behaviors that I want my clients to do. So if I'm telling them to work out, I'm working out. If I'm telling them to eat well, I'm eating well. If I'm telling them to hydrate, I'm drinking a gallon of water. But also self-care and because I'm not good to anybody, my husband, my family, my clients, anyone, unless I take care of myself. Yeah. But at the same time, that also models for them, like, you need to take care of yourself. You cannot pour from an empty cup.
Oof,
and
beautiful.
And I feel that also it's built a lot of strength in me so that I can take other people's challenges on. Doesn't mean that I take it away from them. I can't take somebody else's pain. I wish I could sometimes, just like, why don't you just give me it for a couple hours so you can relax, But at least I can take it on and help them through it and help them heal themselves. Like, I'm not saving anyone. I'm not healing anyone. They're saving themselves. They're healing themselves. I'm just kind of walking them through and helping them navigate. And at the same time, I would say that they're helping me heal myself because this has been a healing journey for me too.
Well said. Well said.
I'm not going to cry.
And every time I get emotional on the channel, I love it because they're going to be people, guys, who say, that guy's a wimp. Why is he crying? And I laugh because I'm like, just the opposite. I am still a warrior through and through.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And part of that strength is to allow the emotion to come out because that's where I want to be strong. I want to be emotionally and mentally strong, and it takes being open.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Well, Becky, in our last couple minutes here together, I am just so grateful for you and what you're doing and involved in.
I'm grateful for you.
It is an incredible mission. Keep pushing, finish strong, finish hard, and and get out there and save. And you say you don't save lives. I would disagree with you. If a person's lost in the woods and somebody comes up and points the direction back to the parking lot, you've saved them.
Yeah.
And you're pointing the direction for people, and really that's that's saving in a lot of ways. So
Thank you.
last little bit of advice you can provide to anybody who's struggling right now and sitting in darkness, what would you say?
I would say that there's a way out, and there are people who will come in and get you if you can't get out on your own. You're not too far gone until you're gone. Please stay.
Yep.
If you are not in crisis, but you feel that you could be at risk for it, find an anchor. What is going to keep you here? It doesn't have to be, for some people, it can be a spouse, it can be children, something. Just find something that will keep you alive until you can get the help that you need. Sometimes being alive is enough.
Yeah.
If you can literally just stay alive until you can get what you need, find something that you can hold on to that will keep you here. And then ask for help. And there are so many of us out there who support you and love you and will be there for you and won't judge you and need you. And, that's really the bottom line is we need them.
Yep.
We need them to keep us safe, to keep us free. We need them as our friends and our family, and that people that we love. I love so many people that have become like family to me, really, across the country and really around the world. Yeah. And it's, with the police, it's like blue line family. It's like, it's amazing how you can connect with somebody just based on the fact that like, oh, my dad was a police officer, or, oh, my husband's a police officer, and you connect so fast. And then the responder community and the military community, it's big, but it's small, because people understand that there are issues that they're facing that they may not face otherwise. So ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And then we're going to ask you if you're okay anyway.
Yeah, 100%. And I would add to that, only when you're done with your service, when you're done with the military, when you're done with being a first responder, we still want you. We still need you.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Your time of 100%. Giving and helping and raising and building people up is not done. That's till we die of natural causes. And then,
absolutely.
Then let it come at that point. Becky, thank you so much for your messages today. I've taken a whole page worth of notes. I appreciate what you're doing, and we'll definitely stay connected on Instagram. If there's ever a chance to collaborate in the future, I'd love to do that again. But
for sure.
Yeah,
lots of good things coming up once I'm out. Once they release me in the wild,
Yeah, well, when that comes, reach out again and let's get you back on.
I will. Thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate you.
All right.